They saw him, 50 of them, resting in 8 long canoes along the mouth of the Utah River. It was 6 a.m. The sun was already rising above the trees, the saturated glow of the early morning tropics soon to be washed out by the stark tropical light. The tide was almost high, and there was no definitive shoreline to speak of, just flooded, scattered shrubby trees where water and land came together and the swamp and dense jungle began. Here they could float in the shade, have a smoke with long cigarettes rolled in the yellow husk of nipa palm, and munch balls of sago flour after a long night of paddling toward home just 3 miles up the Utah. "Look, an oo!" said Pep in the Asmat language. A crocodile. The men reached for their spears, 10 feet long, carved with vicious, inch-long barbs, some of them tipped with the claw of a cassowary. They watched the crocodile, which didn't move like any crocodile they'd ever seen before. Michael was swimming on his back, but he rolled over and saw the men in the canoes and smelled the smoke from their cigarettes and the smoldering coals nestled in mud at their sterns, and he waved, shouted. Unbelievable. He'd made it. "No," said Fine. "It is a man." "Whoa," they grunted. Pep and Fine and Ajim and the others stood and bent forward at the waist and dug their long paddles into the water with powerful strokes, their canoes surging toward the swimming man. The other men in their canoes did the same. The canoes were 40 feet long, narrow, and low to the water, and some bore faded ochre and white vertical stripes. They surrounded him. Michael was smiling and panting, his beard wet, his lips chapped, blistered. Pep reached down and tried to pull him in, but Michael was too exhausted to help them. Fine and Pep held his arms and began towing him toward shore. They recognized him. In a world without photographs or writing, they had sharp memories, and they had seen him before. He had been in the village. His name was Mike. The men in the canoes were black-skinned, strong-featured, with high cheekbones and holes in their septums the size of dimes. Beyond the occasional wild pig or human being, they ate no fat, no oil, and they didn't know sugar. Absent was the subcutaneous layer padding even thin Americans. They were hard muscle, vein, and skin, their chests and shoulders broad from a lifetime of paddling. Their waists were narrow, their abs ripped. They were naked but for tight, finely woven bands of rattan just above their knees and elbows, and fiber bags decorated with the seeds of Job's tears and cassowary and cockatoo feathers. The bags of the older, more important men hung over their chests. Those of the younger hung over their backs. Ajim's, Pep's, and Fine's bags hung over their chests, and their left wrists were bound in thick 6-inch-wide bracelets, protection against the powerful snap of the coarse, rattan strings of their 7-foot-long bow. Some had a carved pig bone through their septum. Ajim looked at Pep. "Now is your chance," he said. It wasn't just a statement. It was a taunt. Ajim was the head of one of the 5 Jehu, or men's houses, that made up the Asmat village of Oceania. He had killed more people than any of them, had taken more heads. He was quick of mind, fierce, bold, belligerent, full of passionate extremes, and he'd earned his status through fearlessness and risk-taking. He exuded what the Asmat called tess, charisma. Pep didn't hesitate. He was surrounded by relatives and fellow villagers, and his status was built on how bold he was, how many people he killed, how many heads he took. He howled and arched his back and drove his spear into the white man's floating ribs. Michael screamed, groaned a deep, inhuman sound. They hauled him up into the canoe, blood spurting from the wound. They knew what they were doing, had done it dozens of times before, were following sacred rules that prescribed every step of what they were about to do, rules that defined them, made them men, made them whole. For they were about to take his power, become him, and restore balance to the world. The 50 men rowed south on the Arafura Sea, standing up